Picture this. You're lying on your kitchen floor, blood pooling beneath your swollen face, begging your own sister to believe you. But instead of helping, she stands beside the man who just beat you senseless, her husband, and tells the police it's your fault. The officers who arrived expecting a simple domestic dispute found something that shook them to their core, a betrayal so twisted, so unthinkable, that even they couldn't hide their disgust. This is how a mortgage dispute became a fight for my life, and how the people I trusted most became the architects of my destruction. My name is Madeline Harper, and for 33 years, I believed that hard work and loyalty were enough to build a decent life. I was wrong about the loyalty part. I've been a credit analyst at Everline Savings and Trust in Denver for 8 years now, the kind of job that sounds boring at cocktail parties but pays the bills and then some. Every morning at 7:30, I'd walk into that sterile office building on 17th Street, grab my coffee black, no sugar, and settle into reviewing loan applications until the numbers started swimming before my eyes. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I'd clawed my way up from a teller position, earning my certification through night classes while working full-time. Nobody handed me anything. My apartment in Capitol Hill reflected that same philosophy, modest but comfortable. Everything earned and nothing borrowed. A one-bedroom with exposed brick walls that I'd painted myself. Second-hand furniture I'd refinished during weekends. And a small balcony where I grew herbs because fresh basil shouldn't cost $8 at Whole Foods. It was quiet, orderly, and safe, everything my childhood home hadn't been. Growing up, Claire and I had learned early that emotions were inconveniences in the Harper household. Our parents, Margaret and Robert, were both accountants who treated family dinners like board meetings and affection like an unnecessary expense. They weren't cruel, just absent in the ways that mattered most. When Claire scraped her knee at age 6, Mom handed her a Band-Aid without looking up from her spreadsheets. When I won the school essay contest at 12, Dad grunted his approval between reviewing tax returns. So Claire and I became each other's warmth in that cold house. She was 3 years younger, all wild curls and gap-toothed grins, following me around like a devoted puppy. I taught her how to braid her hair, helped her with homework, and held her when she had nightmares about the monsters under her bed. We made a pact when I was 15 and she was 12 we'd always have each other's backs, no matter what. Blood was thicker than everything else in our world. That bond carried us through college, her at Colorado State studying marketing, me at Denver University grinding through business and finance courses. We talked every Sunday without fail, shared holidays, celebrated each other's victories. When she graduated and moved back to Denver, I helped her find her first apartment. When I got promoted to senior analyst, she threw me a surprise party with grocery store cake and discount champagne that tasted like celebration anyway. Then Ethan Ward entered the picture 3 years ago. I still remember the first time Claire brought him to Sunday brunch at our usual spot, Snooze on Ballpark. He was undeniably handsome, 6'2", with perfectly styled dark hair and the kind of smile that belonged in toothpaste commercials. He wore an expensive watch and drove a BMW that gleamed like a showroom model. Claire practically glowed sitting next to him, her hand never leaving his arm as she introduced us. "Maddie, this is Ethan. He's in real estate development," she'd said, her voice carrying that breathless quality of new love. Ethan had gripped my hand firmly, maintaining eye contact just a beat too long. "Claire's told me so much about you. Madeline. She says you're the financial genius of the family." Something about his tone felt off, like he was cataloging information rather than making conversation. But Claire was radiant, and I wanted her happy. So I smiled and asked about his work, listened to him describe luxury condo projects and commercial developments with the smooth confidence of a man who'd never doubted his place in the world. Over the following months, I watched my sister transform. The Claire I knew spontaneous, a little chaotic, quick to laugh began disappearing. She started checking her phone obsessively during our coffee dates, cutting conversations short when Ethan called. Her wardrobe shifted from colorful sundresses to muted, conservative outfits that wouldn't embarrass him at work functions. She stopped mentioning her own dreams of starting a small marketing consultancy, instead talking endlessly about Ethan's projects and Ethan's goals and Ethan's vision for their future. The engagement happened fast 8 months after they started dating. Claire called me at 10:15 on a Tuesday night, crying happy tears through the phone as she described the elaborate proposal at the Brown Palace Hotel. I should have been thrilled for her, but something cold settled in my stomach as she rattled off wedding plans that sounded more like corporate events than celebrations. He's already picked the venue. Maddie, the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs. Can you believe it? I'm going to be a Broadmoor bride. That's expensive. Claire, are you sure you can afford? Ethan says not to worry about money. He says I deserve the best. That conversation played on repeat in my mind for weeks, not because I didn't want Claire to have nice things, but because I knew her salary at the nonprofit where she worked, and I was starting to understand that Ethan's financial picture might not be as golden as his watch suggested. The wedding was everything Claire had dreamed of and more than she could afford. 200 guests, ice sculptures, an open bar, and a dress that cost more than my monthly rent. I stood beside her as maid of honor, watching Ethan's groomsmen, all perfectly groomed men in expensive suits who talked loudly about deals and investments, and felt like I was witnessing the end of something precious. But Claire was happy, or she seemed happy, and I convinced myself that was enough. I should have trusted my instincts. I should have asked harder questions. I should have seen the signs that Ethan Ward was building a beautiful prison around my sister, one silk-lined bar at a time. Instead, I stood by and watched, telling myself I was supporting her choices while something fundamental between us began to crack. The call came on a rainy Thursday morning in October, just as I was reviewing a particularly messy commercial loan application. Claire's voice had that forced brightness she'd developed since marrying Ethan, the tone of someone trying to convince herself as much as her audience. Maddie, I have the most exciting news. Ethan and I found our dream house. I set down my coffee, already sensing where this conversation was heading. That's great, Claire. Where is it? Cherry Hills Village. Can you believe it? It's this gorgeous Tudor revival with 5 bedrooms, a 3-car garage, and the most amazing kitchen with granite countertops and a wine cellar. Ethan says it's an investment in our future. Cherry Hills Village, one of Denver's most exclusive neighborhoods, where starter homes began at 7 figures. My sister made $42,000 a year coordinating fundraising events for a local children's charity. Even with Ethan's real estate income, they'd be stretching themselves impossibly thin. Claire, that sounds beautiful, but have you thought about— Actually, that's why I'm calling, she interrupted, her voice shifting to something more tentative. Ethan wondered if you might help us with the mortgage application. You know, since you work at a bank and understand all the financial stuff. There it was. I'd been waiting for this moment since I'd seen Ethan's BMW and expensive watch, since I'd watched him order the most expensive wine at every dinner without glancing at the price. I can look at your application, sure. But Claire, if you're buying in Cherry Hills, you're probably looking at what? $800,900 on your combined income. Actually, we're looking at $1.2 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. $1.2 million. I did quick math in my head, even with perfect credit and a substantial down payment. Their monthly mortgage would be crushing. Add in property taxes for that area, insurance, utilities for a house that size, and they'd be drowning in debt within 6 months. Claire, I need to be straight with you. There's no way you and Ethan can qualify for a loan that size with your current income. The debt-to-income ratio would be— That's exactly what Ethan said you'd say. Her voice had an edge now, defensive. He said you'd focus on the numbers instead of the possibilities. Look, Maddie, Ethan's business is taking off. He's got 3 major developments starting next year. The income is going to increase dramatically. But banks don't lend money based on projected income, especially in real estate development. They need documented, verifiable— Could you just look at our paperwork before you start lecturing me? Please. The plea in her voice made my chest tight. This was my little sister, the girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. But I also knew my job, my professional responsibility, and the reality of what they were attempting. Okay, bring me everything you have. They showed up at my apartment that Saturday afternoon, Claire clutching a manila folder, Ethan carrying himself with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no. He wore dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, his smile easy and expectant. Madeline, thanks for doing this, he said, settling onto my couch like he owned it. Claire's always talking about how brilliant you are with money. I figured, why not keep it in the family? I spread their documents across my coffee table, and with each page, my heart sank deeper. Their credit reports told a story of financial recklessness that made my professional instincts scream warnings. Ethan had $17,000 in credit card debt across 6 cards, all at varying interest rates. Claire had $8,000 on 3 cards she'd never mentioned to me. Their car payments alone, his BMW and her new Audi Q5, totaled $1,200 a month. But it was Ethan's income documentation that really concerned me. His tax returns showed wildly fluctuating earnings: $90,000 2 years ago, $53,000 last year, and this year's pay stubs suggested he'd be lucky to hit $40,000. For someone claiming his business was taking off, the numbers painted a picture of decline. Ethan, I said carefully, these income figures are concerning. Banks need to see stability, consistent earnings. Your last 2 years show a significant decrease. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Those numbers don't reflect the full picture. I have deals in the pipeline worth millions. The Riverside Commons project alone will net me $200,000 in commission next year. I understand that, but lenders need documented income, not potential income. They'll want to see— Jesus, Madeline! He leaned forward, his charm slipping just enough to reveal something harder underneath. We're not asking you to give us the money. We're asking you to help us navigate the system. Surely there's some flexibility in how these things are presented. The word flexibility hung in the air like a neon sign flashing mortgage fraud. I glanced at Claire, hoping to see some recognition of what her husband was suggesting, but she was staring at her hands, her wedding ring catching the afternoon light. Ethan, I can't alter financial documents or misrepresent income. That's illegal. What I can do is help you understand what you'd need to qualify for a smaller loan amount. We don't want a smaller house. His voice carried a new sharpness. Claire deserves the best. She's been living in that cramped apartment, shopping at Target, denying herself because she's been waiting for the right man to take care of her properly. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. There's nothing wrong with Target, and Claire's never needed anyone to take care of her. She's been independent since— Maybe that's been the problem, Ethan interrupted. Maybe she's been settling for less because that's what her family taught her to expect. The insult was subtle but unmistakable. Claire finally looked up, her eyes darting between us with the panicked expression of someone caught between loyalties. Maybe we should look at houses in a different price range, she said quietly. Something more affordable. Absolutely not. Ethan's tone brooked no argument. We've already put in an offer. The sellers are expecting to close in 6 weeks. My stomach dropped. You made an offer without pre-approval. I told them we had financing lined up through family connections. He looked directly at me, challenge clear in his expression. I was counting on you to make that happen. The manipulation was breathtaking in its audacity. He'd backed me into a corner, using my love for Claire as leverage to pressure me into compromising my professional ethics and potentially breaking federal law. Ethan, I need you to understand something. Mortgage fraud carries criminal penalties. People go to prison for falsifying income documents. I won't risk my career or my freedom, and I certainly won't put Claire at risk. Risk. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. The only risk here is Claire missing out on the life she deserves because her sister is too rigid to help family. Claire stood abruptly, her folder of documents clutched to her chest. Maybe we should go. We'll figure something else out. But Ethan remained seated, his eyes fixed on mine. You know what I think. Madeline, I think you're jealous. Your little sister found someone who can give her everything you can't afford, and it kills you. The words hit like a slap, not because they were true, but because he'd weaponized my relationship with Claire, turning my genuine concern into something petty and selfish. Get out, I said quietly. Maddie, please, Claire started. Both of you, get out of my apartment. As they gathered their papers, Ethan paused at my door, his mask of charm completely fallen away. You'll regret this, Madeline. Family should help family. When Claire's heart breaks because we lose this house, remember that you had the power to prevent it. The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded like the end of everything I'd spent my life building with my sister. I stood in my empty living room, surrounded by the echoes of threats disguised as disappointment, and realized that the war for Claire's soul had already begun. I just didn't know yet that I was destined to lose the first battle. The phone call started the next Monday. The first came at 9:15 in the morning, right as I was settling into my desk with my second cup of coffee. Ethan's name flashed on my phone screen, and for a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but some misguided hope that he might apologize for Saturday's confrontation made me answer. Madeline, I want to apologize for how things went yesterday. His voice was smooth again, the sharp edges filed away. I was frustrated, and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. I waited, knowing there was more coming. The thing is, we really need this house. Claire's already planning where the nursery will go, talking about hosting Christmas there. I can't bear to disappoint her. Isn't there some way we can make the numbers work? Ethan, I explained this. Your debt-to-income ratio is... Why, what if we paid down some of the credit cards first? Or if I could show additional income streams? That would help, but you'd need to pay down significant debt and document steady additional income for at least 6 months before. 6 months. We'll lose the house by then. The frustration was creeping back into his voice. There has to be another way. I'm sorry, but there isn't. Not legally. The line went quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, you know, Claire always said you were the smart one in the family. I'm starting to think she confused intelligence with inflexibility. He hung up before I could respond. The second call came 2 hours later, then another at lunch. By Wednesday, he was calling 3 times a day, sometimes reasonable, sometimes cajoling, sometimes with barely concealed anger threading through his words. Each conversation followed the same pattern: charm, pressure, subtle insults, and finally frustrated threats disguised as concern for Claire. She's not sleeping. Madeline, she's heartbroken about the house. Is this really the hill you want to die on? Claire will get over this. There are other houses. No, not like this one. And not at this price. The seller is considering other offers. Every day you delay is money out of our pocket. The text messages were worse. They came at all hours during meetings, at dinner, at 11:30 at night when I was trying to wind down with a book. Claire crying again. This is killing her. How can you watch your sister suffer like this? Found another lender, but they want family verification of income. One phone call from you could change everything. Funny how blood means nothing when money's involved. Claire's learning who she can really count on. I blocked his number twice, but he kept calling from different phones, his office line, Claire's cell, numbers I didn't recognize. When I stopped answering unknown calls, he started showing up. The first time, he caught me coming out of the grocery store on Thursday evening. He was leaning against my car in the King Soopers parking lot, arms crossed, that familiar smile playing at his lips. Avoiding me, Madeline. My hands tightened on my grocery bags. I'm not having this conversation again. Ethan. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. My business partners are expecting this deal to go through. I've already made commitments based on our new address. That was your choice. You made an offer without financing. Because I trusted family to have my back. He pushed off from my car, stepping closer. Claire's devastated. You know, she keeps asking what she did wrong, why her own sister won't help her. The guilt hit exactly where he intended it to. Claire knows I care about her. This isn't about caring. Isn't it because from where I stand, it looks like you care more about your precious rules than your sister's happiness? I tried to step around him to get to my car door, but he shifted, blocking my path. Not aggressively, nothing that would draw attention from other shoppers, but deliberately enough that his intention was clear. Excuse me. Just think about it. Madeline. Really think about whether this is worth damaging your relationship with Claire permanently. He moved aside then, but the threat lingered in the air between us like smoke. The worst part was that Claire's calls had stopped entirely. We'd gone from talking every Sunday to complete silence. I tried reaching out, leaving voicemails that went unreturned, sending texts that showed as read but unanswered. The silence felt like losing a limb, sudden, shocking, and leaving phantom pain where something essential used to be. Finally, on Friday afternoon, she called back. Maddie, her voice was small, uncertain. Can we talk? Of course. Claire, I've been trying to reach you all week. I know. I'm sorry. Things have been complicated. Where are you? Can we meet for coffee? A pause. Actually, I'm outside your building. Can I come up? She looked terrible when I opened my door, dark circles under her eyes. Her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing sweatpants and an old college hoodie I hadn't seen in years. But what struck me most was how small she seemed, like she'd folded in on herself. Oh, honey, I pulled her into a hug, feeling how thin she'd gotten. What's going on? I don't know what to do. Maddie. The words came out in a rush as I led her to the couch. Ethan's been so angry since Saturday. He keeps saying you're trying to sabotage our future, that you can't stand to see me happy. Claire, that's not... But I know you, and I know you wouldn't hurt me on purpose. So either Ethan's wrong about your motives, or I'm wrong about the kind of person you are, and I don't know which is worse. I sat beside her, choosing my words carefully. I want you to be happy, but I also want you to be safe. Financially safe. That house would put you in debt you couldn't climb out of. Ethan says you're being dramatic, that lots of people stretch for their dream home. Stretch, yes, but this isn't stretching. Claire, this is financial suicide. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. He's been different since Saturday, angry all the time, snapping at me for little things. Yesterday, he threw his coffee mug against the wall because I suggested maybe we should look at smaller houses. My blood went cold. He threw things, Claire. Has he ever? No, nothing like that. He's just frustrated about the house. He's under a lot of pressure at work, and this house was supposed to be our fresh start. But her denial came too quickly, and she wouldn't meet my eyes. Claire, if he's being aggressive. He's not. She stood abruptly, wrapping her arms around herself. He's just disappointed. We both are. I came here hoping maybe we could find a compromise, some way to make this work. The hope in her voice broke my heart. Sweetheart, I can't change the numbers. Their debt, their income, it doesn't qualify for a loan that size. I couldn't approve it even if I wanted to. Oh, but what if we had a co-signer, or if we put down a bigger down payment? Where would you get a bigger down payment? Ethan mentioned maybe asking Mom and Dad, or maybe you could... No. The word came out sharper than I intended. Claire, our parents live on fixed incomes, and I'm not risking my financial stability for a house you can't afford. Her face crumpled. So that's it. You're just going to let me lose this... You're not losing anything. There are other houses. Not like this one. And Ethan's right every day we wait. Prices go up. This might be our only chance. It's not your only chance. It's just not the right chance. She was crying now. Quiet tears that made her look like the little girl who used to come to me when the world felt too big and scary. He's going to be so angry with me for coming here. He told me not to. Said you'd already made your position clear. He told you not to come see me. He said it would just upset us both, that there was no point in rehashing the same arguments. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. Maybe he was right. Claire, when did you start needing permission to see your own sister? The question hung between us like a bridge neither of us was brave enough to cross. She looked at me with something that might have been recognition, or maybe just exhaustion. I should go. Ethan's making dinner reservations for 7, and I need to get ready. Claire, wait! But she was already at the door, pausing only to look back with red-rimmed eyes. I love you, Maddie, but I love him too, and I can't keep being torn between you. The door closed behind her with a soft finality that felt like the end of everything. I stood in my empty apartment, surrounded by the ghost of her presence and the growing certainty that I was watching my sister disappear into something I might not be able to save her from. The real war hadn't even begun yet. The call came on a Tuesday evening in November, just as the first snow was starting to dust my windows. Ethan's voice was different this time, calmer, almost conciliatory. Madeline, I owe you an apology. I've been handling this whole situation poorly, and I want to make things right. I set down my dinner fork, instantly suspicious. 3 weeks had passed since Claire's visit. 3 weeks of complete silence from both of them. What do you want? Ethan. I want to find a solution that works for everyone. Look, I've been talking to other lenders, exploring different options, but I think we got off on the wrong foot because I didn't fully understand the process. Could we sit down and discuss this properly? Maybe you could walk me through what we'd need to make this work. Something in his tone felt rehearsed, but the possibility of repairing things with Claire made me consider it. Ethan, I've already explained. I know, but I've been thinking about what you said, about paying down debt first, documenting steady income. Maybe there's a path forward I haven't considered. Claire's been so depressed about losing the house. If there's any chance at all. The manipulation was subtle but effective. He knew exactly which strings to pull. I suppose we could go over the numbers one more time, I said reluctantly. But I'm not changing my professional opinion just because. Of course not. I wouldn't ask you to compromise your integrity. I just want to understand our options better. Could I come by Thursday evening around 7, I promise? No pressure, no arguments. Just a civilized conversation between adults. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Thursday came with an early winter storm that had been building all day. By 6:30, the snow was falling in thick, wet flakes that made the streetlights look like glowing cotton balls. I'd spent the afternoon pulling together loan scenarios for different price points, calculating what they'd need to qualify for smaller amounts. Maybe if I could show Ethan the numbers clearly enough, he'd finally understand the reality of their situation. I'd even prepared a folder of alternative houses in their price range, still nice properties, just not in Cherry Hills Village. It felt like offering peace terms in a war I didn't want to fight. The knock came at exactly 7 o'clock. When I opened the door, I immediately knew something was wrong. Ethan's eyes were glassy, and the smell of alcohol hit me like a wall. Not just a beer or two with dinner, this was the heavy, sweet smell of someone who'd been drinking hard liquor for hours. Ethan, are you drunk? Just a couple drinks to calm my nerves. His words weren't slurred, but there was a loose quality to them that made my stomach clench. Claire and I had a fight before I left. She's not handling the stress well. He pushed past me into my apartment, and I noticed his hands were shaking slightly. Everything about his demeanor set off alarm bells, but I told myself I was overreacting. This was my sister's husband. Whatever his faults, surely he wouldn't. So, he said, settling heavily onto my couch and spreading his papers across my coffee table with exaggerated care. Show me the magic numbers that are going to save my marriage. Ethan, maybe we should do this another time, when you haven't been drinking. I'm fine. But his movements were too deliberate, the way drunk people moved when they were trying to prove their sobriety. Let's get this over with. I sat across from him, keeping the coffee table between us, and opened my folder. I've prepared some scenarios based on smaller loan amounts. If you were looking at houses in the $400,000 to $500,000 range, we don't want a smaller house. But with your current income and debt ratios, what if I told you Claire was pregnant? The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Pregnant. With my child. My heir. He leaned forward, his eyes fixed on mine with uncomfortable intensity. Changes things, doesn't it? Knowing there's a baby coming who deserves the best life possible. Is she pregnant? She could be. We've been trying. And when it happens, when we have a family, we'll need space, good schools, a nursery, all the things that house can provide. Ethan, banks don't approve loans based on hypothetical pregnancies. Jesus Christ! He slammed his hand down on the coffee table, making me jump. Do you hear yourself, hypothetical pregnancies? This is my wife we're talking about, your sister, the mother of my future children. The alcohol was making him louder, more aggressive. His carefully constructed charm was dissolving, revealing something uglier underneath. I understand you want the best for your family, but I can't approve a loan you can't afford. I can't, or won't. He stood up unsteadily, beginning to pace my small living room like a caged animal. Because I think this is about control. I think you can't stand that Claire chose me over you. That's not... She used to call you every day. Did you know that before me? Every single day, running to Big Sister for advice about everything. What to wear, what to eat, what to think. You were her whole world. His voice was getting louder, more venomous. But then I came along and gave her something better, gave her a real life, a real future, and you just can't handle being replaced. Ethan, you need to leave. I stood up, moving toward my phone. You're drunk, and this conversation is over. I'm not going anywhere until we settle this. He stopped pacing, fixing me with a stare that made my skin crawl. Claire is crying herself to sleep every night because of you, because her own sister won't help her when she needs it most. That's not fair, and you know it. Fair. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about fair would be helping family. Fair would be using your position to give us what we need instead of hiding behind policy and procedure. I won't commit mortgage fraud. Not for you, not for anyone. Fraud. He spat the word like it tasted bitter. Such a dramatic word for a little flexibility. It's not flexibility. It's illegal. You know what's illegal, destroying a marriage out of jealousy. He was moving closer now, and I could smell the whiskey on his breath, see the ugly twist his features had taken. Claire was happy before you poisoned her against this house. Against me. I never said anything against you. Bullshit. The word exploded out of him. You think I don't know what you're doing? Planting seeds of doubt, making her question everything, turning her against her own husband. Ethan, you need to calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. His voice rose to a shout that seemed to bounce off my apartment walls. You've ruined everything. The house, our future, our marriage, all because you can't stand to see Claire happy without you. I backed toward my kitchen, where my phone was charging on the counter. I'm calling Claire. You need to... Don't you dare call my wife! In 2 quick steps, he was between me and the phone, his face flushed with anger and alcohol. This is between you and me. There is no you and me. Ethan, this is about a loan application you don't qualify for. Everything comes back to that, doesn't it? Your precious procedures, your rules. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. Well, let me tell you something about your rules. Madeline, they're about to cost you everything. The threat in his voice was unmistakable now. This wasn't just a drunk man venting frustration. This was something darker, more dangerous. Get out of my apartment, now. Or what you'll call the police. Tell them that your brother-in-law came to discuss a mortgage and you didn't like his tone. He was right, and we both knew it. He hadn't technically done anything wrong yet. Just words, just anger, just the implied threat of violence hanging in the air like a loaded gun. You're going to approve that loan. Madeline, you're going to find a way to make it work. No, I'm not. The punch came so fast I didn't even see it coming. His fist connected with my cheek with a sound like breaking wood, and suddenly I was on the floor, my head ringing, warm blood flooding my mouth. The shock was almost worse than the pain. This was actually happening. This man was actually hitting me in my own home. "Ethan, stop!" But he was past hearing me now, past reason, operating on pure rage and alcohol-fueled violence. His foot caught me in the ribs, driving the air from my lungs. Then his hands were in my hair, pulling me up only to slam me back down. "You sanctimonious bitch!" he snarled between blows. "You think you're so much better than everyone else." I tried to crawl away, toward my phone, but he grabbed my ankle and dragged me back. My kitchen table caught me across the face, and I felt something in my nose give way with a wet crack. "Please," I gasped, tasting blood, my vision blurring. "Please stop!" But he was beyond stopping now, beyond anything resembling the charming man who'd won my sister's heart. This was who he really was underneath all that polish, a man who took what he wanted and destroyed anything that stood in his way. "All you had to do was help family," he panted as his fist connected with my temple. "All you had to do was be a good sister." The irony would have been funny if I weren't dying. Through the roaring in my ears, I heard something that sounded like salvation sirens, getting closer. Ethan heard them too. He stepped back, looking around my destroyed apartment with the confused expression of a man waking from a dream. Blood, my blood, was splattered across his shirt and hands. "Shit," he muttered. "Shit, shit, shit." The sirens were right outside now. Someone must have heard the screaming. Called 911. Thank God for thin apartment walls and concerned neighbors. As heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs, Ethan looked down at me where I lay broken and bleeding on my kitchen floor. "Remember," he said quietly, "this is your fault. All of it." Then the door burst open, and suddenly my apartment was full of police officers and paramedics and people shouting instructions I couldn't quite follow. But through it all, one thought echoed in my shattered consciousness. Where was Claire? I was about to find out. The hospital ceiling tiles had water stains that looked like continents I couldn't name. I'd been staring at them for 3 hours, cataloging every brown spot and crack while nurses checked my vitals and doctors examined x-rays of my fractured ribs and broken nose. My left eye was swollen shut, and every breath felt like swallowing glass. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the hollow ache in my chest every time I thought about Claire. She still hadn't come. Detective Martinez sat beside my bed, a weathered woman in her 50s with kind eyes and calloused hands that suggested she'd seen enough violence to recognize the real thing. She'd been patient, letting me give my statement in fragments between morphine doses and crying jags. "He's been arrested," she told me for the 3rd time. "Assault in the 1st degree, breaking and entering. He's not going anywhere tonight." "What did he tell you?" "That you attacked him first, that he was defending himself." She paused, studying my face. "The evidence doesn't support that story. Your injuries are consistent with being beaten while down. His knuckles are split, but he doesn't have a mark on him otherwise." "And Claire, did you talk to Claire?" Detective Martinez's expression grew carefully neutral. "She's here. She's been here for about an hour. Actually, she's speaking with my partner." "Can I see her?" "Madeline, I need to prepare you for this. She's standing by her husband. She's claiming this was all a misunderstanding, that you and Ethan had been drinking together and things got out of hand." The words hit me like a second beating. "I don't drink. I had half a glass of wine with dinner hours before he arrived." "I know. The responding officers noted you showed no signs of intoxication, while Mr. Ward was clearly impaired. But she's insisting you've been harassing them about this mortgage situation, that you've been unstable recently." "She said I was unstable." "She's scared, honey. In my experience, when women defend abusive men, it's usually because they're terrified of what happens if they don't." But even as Detective Martinez said it, I could see in her eyes that she wasn't entirely convinced that was the case here. There was something else, something that made her shift uncomfortably in her chair. "She wants to see you," the detective continued, "but I want you to understand that anything you say to her might be used to support her husband's defense. Are you sure you're ready for that conversation?" I wasn't. I would never be ready. But I needed to look my sister in the eyes and understand how we'd gotten here. "Send her in." Detective Martinez squeezed my hand before leaving. "Remember, you're the victim here. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Claire appeared in my doorway 5 minutes later, and the sight of her nearly broke me all over again. She looked immaculate, perfect makeup, hair-styled, wearing the navy dress Ethan had bought her for work functions. Not a single sign that her world had exploded 3 hours ago when police dragged her husband away in handcuffs. "Oh, Maddie." Her voice was soft, concerned, but something was wrong with it. It sounded like she was performing sympathy rather than feeling it. "Look what's happened to you." "Claire." My voice came out as a croak through my swollen throat. "Thank God you're here. I was so scared." "The police told me what you said." She sat in the chair Detective Martinez had vacated, smoothing her skirt with hands that weren't quite steady. "About Ethan attacking you." "He did attack me. Look at my face. Claire, look at what he did." "I can see you're hurt. But Maddie, honey, you've been under so much stress lately. The officers said you'd been drinking." "I hadn't been drinking. Claire, you know me. When have I ever—" "People change when they're upset, when they're jealous." Her voice carried a strange, rehearsed quality, like she was reciting lines she'd practiced. "The Ethan I know would never hurt anyone. He's gentle, loving. He coaches Little League on weekends." The disconnect between her words and reality was so vast I felt dizzy. "Claire, he beat me unconscious in my own apartment. The neighbors heard me screaming." "Maybe things got heated. Maybe you both said things, did things you regret. But Ethan would never just attack someone unprovoked." "So what are you saying, that I provoked him?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she looked up, her eyes were red but dry. "I think you've been jealous of my marriage from the beginning. I think you couldn't stand seeing me happy. So you found ways to sabotage us." The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that I actually gasped. "You think I sabotaged your marriage?" "The mortgage, Maddie. You could have helped us, but you chose not to. You used your position to hurt us. And when Ethan confronted you about it tonight, things got out of hand." "He didn't confront me. He beat me bloody." "That's your version." Her voice was getting stronger now, more confident in her delusion. "But Ethan says you attacked him first. He says you were drunk and angry, that you came at him with a kitchen knife." A kitchen knife. I tried to sit up, ignoring the fire in my ribs. "Claire, there was no knife. Look around this room. Do you see any defensive wounds on me? Do you see any cuts on my hands, my arms? If I'd had a weapon, wouldn't I have used it to defend myself?" I don't know what to think anymore. But even as she said it, I could see the doubt flickering in her eyes. For just a moment, the sister I'd grown up with broke through the facade. "The police showed me pictures of your apartment. There was so much blood." "My blood, Claire, all of it mine." "But why would Ethan—" She stopped herself, shaking her head. "No, no, you don't understand him like I do. He's been working so hard to build a life for us. The stress of losing the house, your refusal to help. It's been eating at him." "So it's my fault he beat me." "I didn't say that." "You did. You're saying I drove him to this." She stood abruptly, pacing to the window that looked out over the hospital parking lot. "All I know is that 6 months ago, we were happy. We had plans, dreams. Then you got involved with the mortgage situation, and everything started falling apart." "Claire, look at me. Really look at me." I struggled to sit up fully, wanting her to see the full extent of what her husband had done. "Does this look like something that happened because I wouldn't approve alone?" She turned from the window, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw her really see me. The shock in her eyes, the way her hand flew to her mouth, told me that the sister I'd grown up with was still in there somewhere. But then her expression hardened again. The lawyers will sort out what really happened. Right now, I need to focus on getting Ethan out of jail. Getting him out. The words came out as a whisper. Claire, he could have killed me. Don't be dramatic. You're fine. Bruised, but fine. I have 3 broken ribs and a concussion. Injuries heal, but destroying a man's reputation, his career, his future that's permanent. She gathered her purse, preparing to leave. I'm asking you, as your sister, to think very carefully about pressing charges. Think about what this will do to our family. Our family. I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. What family? Claire. The one where my sister watches her husband beat me unconscious and then blames me for it. You're upset. You're not thinking clearly. She moved toward the door, then paused. Ethan wants to work this out privately. He's willing to pay your medical bills, maybe help with time off work. All you have to do is tell the police you don't want to press charges. The offer hung in the air like poison gas. She was asking me to let my attacker go free in exchange for money. She was asking me to pretend my own beating hadn't happened. And if I refuse, then you'll tear this family apart over a misunderstanding that got out of hand. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Claire, this was attempted murder. Stop being so dramatic. But her voice shook slightly. Ethan made a mistake. People make mistakes when they're drinking, when they're stressed. It doesn't make them monsters. What does make them monsters? Then, if beating your wife's sister unconscious isn't enough. She was crying now, but still defending him. He's not a monster. He's my husband, the father of my future children. I can't just abandon him because he's violent, because he nearly killed me. Because my sister is trying to destroy him. The words echoed in the hospital room like a gunshot. Even Claire seemed shocked by her own vehemence. But she didn't take it back. I need you to really think about what you're doing here, Maddie. If you press charges, if you testify against him, you'll be destroying more than just Ethan. You'll be destroying me too. My marriage, my future, everything I've built. What about what he destroyed? What about my safety, my trust, my belief that family protects family? We are protecting family. I'm protecting my husband. And who's protecting me? The question hung between us like a bridge burning. Claire stared at me with tears streaming down her cheeks, but her jaw was set with stubborn determination. The detective is going to come back in a few minutes, she said quietly. When she does, you can choose to end this now, or you can choose to make it worse for everyone. Including you. Especially me. She left without saying goodbye, without kissing my forehead or promising to call tomorrow. She left like she was walking away from a stranger who'd inconvenienced her evening. I lay back against my pillows, staring at those water-stained ceiling tiles, and realized that the beating had been just the beginning. The real destruction was still to come. When Detective Martinez returned 20 minutes later, she found me sitting up in bed, my good eye blazing with a fury that probably should have scared me. How did it go? She asked carefully. She wants me to drop the charges. And I thought about Claire's tears, her pleas, her threats disguised as concern. I thought about Ethan's fists, his rage, his promise that this was my fault. I thought about the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, and the woman who'd just walked away from my hospital bed. I'm pressing charges, all of them. Detective Martinez smiled grimly. Good, because we found something in your apartment that changes everything. She pulled out her phone, showing me a photo that made my blood run cold. Your neighbor's security camera caught the whole thing through your kitchen window. Every punch, every kick, every moment you begged him to stop. The fury that had been building in my chest crystallized into something harder, sharper. Does Claire know about this? Not yet, but she will. I closed my eyes, feeling something fundamental shift inside me. The sister who'd spent 33 years trying to protect Claire Harper was dying in this hospital bed. The woman who would replace her was going to be much more dangerous. The first 3 days after the attack, I barely left my bed. Not because of the physical pain, though my ribs screamed with every breath and my face looked like abstract art in shades of purple and yellow, but because of a crushing despair that felt like drowning in slow motion. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Claire's face in that hospital room, heard her voice choosing Ethan over me, over truth, over everything we'd built together since childhood. By the 4th day, the despair had crystallized into something else entirely. I was sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the bloodstains on my hardwood floor that the crime scene cleaners had missed, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hope you're happy. Ethan lost his job today because of your lies. You've destroyed an innocent man's life." Claire, using a burner phone to avoid Detective Martinez's warnings about witness intimidation. Instead of the crushing sadness I'd expected, I felt nothing but cold, calculating anger. She thought Ethan was innocent. She thought I was the one destroying lives. Time to show her what destruction really looked like. I opened my laptop and started researching. Within 2 hours, I'd found the first crack in Ethan Ward's carefully constructed facade. A civil lawsuit from 2019 settled out of court, filed by one Jessica Morrison. The case details were sealed, but the docket mentioned assault and battery and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The settlement amount wasn't disclosed, but the fact that he'd paid rather than fought suggested guilt. Jessica Morrison, 28 years old, living in Fort Collins now, working as a veterinary technician. According to her social media, what little was public, she'd lived in Denver until late 2019, right around the time her lawsuit against Ethan was settled. I spent another hour crafting the perfect email. Professional but personal, sympathetic but not presumptuous. I explained who I was, what had happened to me, and that I was trying to understand if this was a pattern. Her response came within an hour. "Can we talk on the phone? I don't want this in writing." Jessica's voice shook when she called that evening. "I saw the news about your case. When I heard his name, God, I hoped I'd never hear that name again." "What did he do to you?" "We dated for 8 months. He seemed perfect at first, charming, successful, attentive. But he had this need to control everything. What I wore, who I talked to, how I spent my time. When I tried to break up with him, She paused, taking a shaky breath. "He broke 3 of my ribs and gave me a concussion. Sound familiar?" The parallels were chilling. "Why didn't you press criminal charges?" "I tried, but Ethan was smart. He had witnesses who said I was unstable, obsessive. He painted me as a crazy ex-girlfriend who couldn't let go. The prosecutor said it would be hard to prove. So I settled the civil case and moved away." "Who were these witnesses? Friends of his? Business associates?" And another pause. "His girlfriend at the time. She told police I'd been stalking them, that I'd threatened her." "His girlfriend?" "Claire something, pretty blonde, seemed totally devoted to him. She swore under oath that I was dangerous." The world tilted sideways. Claire had known. She'd known exactly what kind of man Ethan was, and she'd helped him destroy his previous victim. "Jessica, would you be willing to testify if this goes to trial? Are you sure you want to do this? Because if you're not prepared to see it through, if you're thinking you might change your mind or reconcile with your family, don't start this fight. He'll destroy you." "I'm sure." "Then yes, I'll testify. It's time someone stopped him." After we hung up, I sat in my dark apartment, processing what I'd learned. This wasn't just about the mortgage or the beating. This was about a predator who'd found the perfect accomplice in my sister, someone so desperate for love and security that she'd help him hunt his prey. The research became my obsession. I took medical leave from work and spent every waking hour building a case that would be impossible to deny. Armed with Jessica's testimony and Detective Martinez's support, I began unraveling Ethan's life thread by thread. His real estate license had been suspended twice for ethical violations. His business partners had filed complaints about missing funds. His previous apartment complex had evicted him for non-payment of rent just months before he met Claire. The successful developer was actually a house of cards held together by charm and lies. But the most damaging discovery came when I hired a private investigator, a retired cop named Frank Sullivan, who Detective Martinez recommended. Frank had connections at credit agencies and knew how to follow paper trails that led to uncomfortable truths. "Your brother-in-law's been busy," Frank told me over coffee at a diner downtown. He slid a manila folder across the table. "3 credit cards opened in your sister's name without her knowledge. A personal loan for $50,000 using her information and forged documents. He's been systematically destroying her credit while building up debt she doesn't even know exists." The folder contained page after page of evidence applications with Claire's forged signature, bills sent to a P.O. box she'd never seen, credit reports showing a credit score that had plummeted from excellent to terrible over the past 18 months. "The address on file for all these accounts," Frank continued, "is that house they wanted to buy in Cherry Hills Village?" He was using the mortgage application as cover to establish residency there for his credit fraud scheme. "She has no idea." According to bank records, all statements go to his P.O. box. She'd only find out if she checked her credit report independently, and most people don't think to do that when they trust their spouse. I stared at the evidence, feeling sick. Ethan hadn't just been pressuring me to approve a fraudulent mortgage, he'd been using that mortgage as part of an elaborate scheme to steal my sister's identity and destroy her financial future. "There's more," Frank said grimly. "I found 2 other women in different states with similar patterns. Romantic relationships, financial abuse, physical violence when they tried to leave. He's been doing this for years." "How is he not in prison?" "Same reason your sister doesn't believe he beat you. He's very good at choosing victims who'll protect him, and he's smart about moving on before the law catches up." "Not this time." Frank smiled. "No, this time he picked the wrong family to mess with." That night, I called Detective Martinez and arranged to meet with the district attorney, armed with Jessica's testimony, Frank's financial evidence, and the other victims Frank had located. We built a case that went far beyond simple assault. Identity theft, wire fraud, domestic violence across state lines, pattern of behavior suggesting organized criminal activity. "This isn't just about your beating anymore," District Attorney Sarah Chin explained during our meeting. "This is about stopping a serial predator." "What does that mean for Claire?" "It means she's going to have to choose between protecting a criminal and protecting herself, because if she continues to obstruct this investigation, she could face charges as an accessory." I thought about my sister's tears in the hospital room, her desperate pleas to protect her marriage. She'd chosen Ethan once, but that was before she knew the full truth about what he'd done to her finances, her future, her life. "When will you tell her?" "Tomorrow. We'll serve search warrants for their apartment and present her with the evidence. She'll have a choice: cooperate with the investigation or go down with him." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, the sister who'd trusted me to protect her from the monsters under the bed. I'd failed to protect her from the monster she'd married, but I could still save her from the one she was becoming. The war wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about rescue. And tomorrow, Claire would learn that sometimes being saved feels exactly like being destroyed. The call came at 6:43 in the morning, jolting me from the first decent sleep I'd had in weeks. Claire's number flashed on my phone, and for a wild moment, I thought she might be calling to apologize, to finally see reason. Instead, I heard sobbing so violent I could barely make out her words. "They took everything, Maddie, everything. The police came with boxes and warrants, and they took our computers, our files, our bank statements. They're saying Ethan stole my identity. They're saying he's been lying about everything." I sat up carefully, my ribs still tender. "Claire, where are you?" "At Mom and Dad's. The police said I couldn't stay at the apartment while they process it as a crime scene." "Crime scene. Maddie, my home is a crime scene." Her voice broke completely on those last words, and despite everything she'd done, despite her betrayal in that hospital room, my heart ached for her. This was the moment I'd both dreaded and hoped for when the fantasy she'd built with Ethan finally collapsed under the weight of reality. "What did they tell you exactly?" "So much. Too much. Detective Martinez had this folder full of documents with my name on them, accounts I never opened, loans I never applied for, $50,000 in debt I didn't know existed, my credit score." She laughed bitterly. 780 down to 412. In 18 months. "Claire. And there are other women who say he hurt them, stole from them. They showed me photos, Maddie, police reports. One woman had injuries that looked just like yours." I closed my eyes, feeling no satisfaction in being right. "Jessica Morrison. You know about her." "I found her. I found all of them." The silence stretched between us, heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. When Claire spoke again, her voice was small, broken. "How long have you known—" "I started researching after the hospital, after you chose him over me." "I didn't choose him over you. I was trying to protect my marriage. By calling me a liar, by asking me to let my attacker go free." I was scared. The words came out as a whisper. I was so scared that if I admitted you were right about him, it would mean I'd been wrong about everything. My whole life for the past 3 years would have been a lie. "It was a lie, Claire, all of it." "I know that now." She was crying again, but quieter now. Exhausted. "They showed me the video from your neighbor's security camera. Oh, God, Maddie, what he did to you. How you begged him to stop." I waited, letting her process what she'd seen. I watched my husband beat my sister unconscious, and I blamed my sister for it. What kind of person does that make me? A scared one, a manipulated one, but not an evil one. Aren't I, because I keep thinking about that night in the hospital, the things I said to you, and I can't understand how those words came out of my mouth. It was like I was watching someone else destroy everything that mattered to me. I thought about the 3 weeks of silence, the text messages blaming me for Ethan's job loss, the way she'd stood in that hospital room and systematically demolished our relationship to protect a man who'd been systematically destroying her life. "The district attorney wants to meet with you," I said. "They need your cooperation to build the strongest possible case." "Against Ethan." "Against Ethan, for fraud, identity theft, domestic violence, racketeering. They think he's been running this same con in multiple states." Another long pause. "What if I can't do it? What if I can't testify against him?" "Then he'll probably get a plea deal for lesser charges. He'll serve minimal time, and he'll be free to do this to someone else." "But if I do testify—" "He goes away for a long time, and maybe you get some of your life back." "I don't know if there's anything left to get back. My credit is destroyed. My savings are gone. My apartment is a crime scene. And you—" Her voice broke again. "I don't know if you can ever forgive me for what I said to you." I stared out my window at the Denver skyline, thinking about forgiveness, about family, about the difference between the sister I'd lost and the sister I might still be able to save. "Meet with the DA, Claire. Hear what they have to say. Then we'll talk about everything else." The meeting was set for 2 o'clock that afternoon in District Attorney Thompson's office. I arrived early, wanting to be there when Claire walked in, wanting her to know she wasn't facing this alone. She looked terrible pale, exhausted, wearing the same clothes she'd had on the day before. But there was something different in her eyes, a clarity that had been missing for months. "Before we start," she said to DA Thompson, "I need to apologize to my sister, publicly, officially, in front of witnesses." She turned to me, tears already streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, Maddie. I'm sorry for not believing you, for blaming you, for choosing my abuser over my protector. I'm sorry for every cruel word, every moment of silence, every time I should have stood up for you and didn't." "Claire!" I'm sorry for being so desperate to believe in love that I helped a predator hunt his victims. I'm sorry for being weak when you needed me to be strong, and I'm sorry that it took the police showing me video of your beating for me to remember who I used to be." The apology hung in the air like a bridge between who we'd been and who we might become. I reached across the table and took her hand. "I forgive you, but more importantly, you need to forgive yourself, because the woman who defended Ethan, that wasn't really you. That was someone he created, someone he needed you to be." De Thompson cleared her throat. "Claire, we need to discuss your role in all of this. Specifically, your testimony in the Jessica Morrison case 3 years ago." Claire's face went white. "I perjured myself, didn't I?" "You testified that Jessica Morrison was stalking you and Ethan, that she was unstable and potentially dangerous. We now know that Ethan had just finished beating and financially abusing her, exactly as he did to you and Madeline. He told me she was crazy. He showed me text messages that seemed obsessive, emails that looked threatening. I thought I was protecting us from a dangerous ex-girlfriend. Those messages were likely fabricated. Ethan is very good at creating evidence to support his narratives. So Jessica went through what Maddie went through, what I went through, and instead of helping her, I helped him silence her." "Yes, but you can help her now. And you can help the other victims we've identified. Your testimony about Ethan's methods, his manipulation techniques, his pattern of behavior, it could be the key to stopping him permanently." Claire looked at me, seeking something I wasn't sure I could give her. Absolution, maybe. Or permission to do what we both knew was right. What exactly would I have to testify about? Everything. The financial abuse you didn't know about, the control, the isolation, the way he turned you against your own family, the night he beat Madeline, and how he convinced you to blame her for it. And if I do this, if I testify, what happens to me? Immunity for the perjury in the Morrison case, in exchange for truthful testimony here. Protection during the trial. Help rebuilding your credit and financial life. And what happens to him? De Thompson smiled grimly. With your testimony, Jessica's testimony, the financial evidence, and the video of the assault on Madeline, he's looking at 25 to life under the federal RICO statutes. Claire closed her eyes, and for a moment, I saw the little girl who used to be afraid of monsters under the bed. He's going to be so angry with me. He's in jail. Claire, he can't hurt you anymore. You don't understand. He said if I ever betrayed him, he'd make sure everyone knew what a weak, pathetic person I really was. He said he'd destroy any chance I had at a normal life. I squeezed her hand harder. He already destroyed your normal life. Now you get to help build a better one. She opened her eyes and looked directly at D.A. Thompson. When do we start? Right now. I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning. Every lie he told you, every time he made you doubt yourself, every moment you should have trusted your instincts but trusted him instead. Claire took a shaky breath. It's going to take a while. We have time. And so my sister began the long, painful process of dismantling the fantasy that had nearly cost us everything. With each revelation, each admission of how thoroughly she'd been manipulated, I saw her becoming herself again. The trial was still months away, but in that conference room, watching Claire choose truth over comfort, justice over complicity, I knew we'd already won the most important battle. Ethan Ward had spent 3 years turning my sister into someone I didn't recognize. But the woman sitting across from me, finally ready to fight back, was every inch the Claire I'd grown up loving. The sister I'd been willing to die for was finally ready to live for herself. The courtroom was packed on the day of sentencing. I sat in the front row, Claire beside me, our hands interlinked in a way that would have been impossible 6 months ago. Behind us, Jessica Morrison and 2 other victims Ethan had destroyed across multiple states. In front of us, the man who had tried to break us all sat shackled at the defendant's table, his expensive suits replaced by Orange County jail scrubs. The trial had lasted 3 weeks, 3 weeks of testimony that laid bare every lie, every manipulation, every moment of violence that Ethan Ward had inflicted on the women unlucky enough to love him. Claire's testimony had been devastating calm, detailed, unflinching as she described how he'd isolated her from family, controlled her finances, and convinced her that his abuse of me was somehow my fault. He made me believe that love meant never questioning him, she'd said from the witness stand, looking directly at the jury. That being a good wife meant protecting him even when I knew he was wrong, even when I watched him beat my sister unconscious and heard her begging for mercy. The defense had tried everything, painting me as a vindictive sister, jealous of Claire's happiness, suggesting the other victims were part of some elaborate conspiracy, claiming Ethan's violence was an isolated incident brought on by alcohol and stress. But the evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showing systematic fraud, medical records documenting a pattern of injuries across multiple victims, and most damning of all, that security camera footage showing exactly what kind of man Ethan Ward really was when no one was watching. Now, as Judge Catherine Morrison, no relation to Jessica, prepared to deliver sentence, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Whatever happened next, we'd already won. Claire was free. The other victims had their voices back, and Ethan would never again have the power to destroy someone's life while convincing them it was their own fault. Mr. Ward, Judge Morrison began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. You have been found guilty on 14 counts, including aggravated assault, identity theft, wire fraud, and racketeering under the RICO Act. But beyond the legal charges, this court has heard testimony about something far more insidious: your systematic destruction of women's sense of reality, their trust in their own perceptions, their belief in their own worth. Ethan sat perfectly still, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched on the table. The court has reviewed victim impact statements from 5 women whose lives you've devastated, women who trusted you, loved you, and paid for that trust with broken bones, destroyed credit, and shattered sense of self. But perhaps most disturbing is how you turned your victims into accomplices in their own abuse, convincing them that your violence was their fault. Your crimes were their responsibility. Judge Morrison's eyes found Claire in the gallery. Ms. Harper's testimony was particularly illuminating. The psychological manipulation required to convince a woman to blame her own sister for being beaten to stand in a hospital room and defend the man who'd just put her sister there represents a level of calculated cruelty this court rarely encounters. Claire squeezed my hand tighter, and I could feel her trembling. We'd talked about this moment for months, the public acknowledgement of how thoroughly she'd been manipulated. The shame still ate at her, but she was learning to separate the woman Ethan had created from the woman she really was. However, the judge continued, this case also demonstrates the power of truth to overcome even the most sophisticated manipulation. Ms. Harper's courage in ultimately choosing justice over loyalty to her abuser likely prevented you from destroying additional victims. Ethan finally moved, turning slightly to look back at us. His eyes met mine across the courtroom, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Not the performance fear he'd shown during trial, but genuine terror at losing control of the narrative. Mr. Ward, do you have anything to say before sentencing? Ethan stood slowly, his shackles clanking. For a moment, I thought he might actually apologize, might show some hint of remorse for the lives he'd destroyed. Instead, he turned fully toward the gallery, toward me, and his mask finally fell away completely. This is all lies, he said, his voice carrying that familiar edge of barely controlled rage. These women are vindictive, jealous, mentally unstable. Madeline Harper couldn't stand seeing her sister happy, so she orchestrated this entire conspiracy to destroy an innocent man. Even now, even facing decades in prison, he couldn't stop lying, couldn't stop trying to rewrite reality to cast himself as the victim. Claire, he continued, his voice taking on that manipulative tone I remembered from my apartment. "You know who I really am. You know I love you. Don't let them poison you against me forever." For a moment, Claire went very still beside me. I wondered if some part of her, the part that had loved him for 3 years, might waver. Then she stood up. "I know exactly who you are," she said clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the courtroom. "You're a predator who destroys women for sport. You're a criminal who stole my identity and finances. You're a coward who beats women and then blames them for it." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "But most of all, you're a man who lost. You tried to turn me into someone I wasn't, tried to make me complicit in your crimes, tried to destroy the most important relationship in my life. And you failed." She sat back down, and Ethan's face contorted with fury. "You ungrateful bitch! I gave you everything. I made you someone worth—" "That's enough," Judge Morrison snapped. "Mr. Ward, you will remain silent or be removed from this courtroom." But the damage was done. In those few seconds of uncontrolled rage, Ethan had shown the jury, the judge, and everyone watching exactly who he really was beneath the charm and manipulation. "Given the severity and scope of your crimes," Judge Morrison continued, "and your complete lack of remorse as demonstrated here today, this court sentences you to 28 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Additionally, you are ordered to pay restitution totaling $473,000 to your victims." The gavel came down with a sound like thunder. As the bailiffs led Ethan away, he looked back one last time, but instead of the fear I'd seen earlier, his expression was pure hatred. "This isn't over," he mouthed silently. "Yes," I whispered back, "it is." Claire and I walked out of that courthouse together, blinking in the afternoon sunshine like people emerging from a cave. The last 8 months had been the worst of our lives, but also somehow the most honest. We'd lost our illusions about family loyalty, about love conquering all, about the safety of the world we thought we knew. But we'd found something more valuable than knowledge that we could survive anything, even each other's betrayal. "What now?" Claire asked as we stood on the courthouse steps. "Now we heal. Now we rebuild. Now we remember that the monsters under the bed are real, but so is the love that helps us fight them." She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in almost a year. "I'm thinking of going back to school, maybe social work, helping other women who've been where I was." "That sounds perfect." "And you?" I looked back at the courthouse where Ethan Ward had finally faced justice for his crimes, where my sister had found her voice again, where 5 women had refused to let a predator rewrite their stories. "I'm thinking of writing a book about what happened to us, about how manipulation works, how good people can be turned into accomplices to their own destruction, about how the truth always wins in the end, even when it takes everything you have to tell it." Would you write about me, about the things I said in the hospital?" "Only if you want me to. Only if you think it might help someone else recognize what's happening to them before it's too late." Claire nodded slowly. "I think I'd like that. I think the woman I was in that hospital room needs to be remembered, so she's never allowed to exist again." We walked to our cars together, and for the first time in months, the future felt like something worth looking forward to. Ethan Ward had tried to destroy our family, our trust, our very sense of reality. Instead, he'd shown us exactly how strong we could be when we stopped being afraid of the truth. The monsters under the bed were real, but we'd learned how to turn on the lights. Thank you so much for listening to this story of survival, betrayal, and ultimately, the power of truth to overcome even the most sophisticated manipulation. I'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening to this story? What are your thoughts on how family bonds can be both our greatest strength and our most vulnerable weakness? Please comment below to share your location and your reflections. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that explore the complexities of human relationships. And don't forget to share your own thoughts on how we can better support survivors of domestic abuse and manipulation.